All right, Mark, how are you today?
I'm very well, Stuart. You yourself?
How have you been over the last couple of weeks since we last spoke?
Very wet would be the thing. We always joke about the weather, but it hasn't been particularly pleasant. Definitely not the Costa del Sol at the moment.
Well, the weather is something that a lot of people like to speak about. It does influence people's holiday choices. People, when they travel to your part of the world, Mark, they want sun. They don't want to get British weather or Northern European weather when they come to a country like Spain. Historically, it's been guaranteed maybe for a week or 5 or 6 days where it might rain during these months. But this has been quite different to recent years, right?
Yeah, I mean, we always get a fair bit of rain down here through the winter, but it's a bit sporadic. But it's been non-stop for 2 weeks. Even though it's clear today, we're scheduled for another week or so of wet weather next week. I remember
Well,
my brother-in-law being down here 3 years ago this time of year, and he also got 7 days of wet weather. But
yeah.
to have it going into a third week is very unusual.
Well, I'm checking out the weather app here, Malaga. So we've got today, it says it might rain, 45% chance. Tomorrow, there's a 70% chance that it's going to rain. Sunday as well, Monday as well. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, as we can see on the screen here, sun and decent temperatures in the 20s.
Well, they keep promising us this sun, and to be fair, if I open my front door now, it is a blue sky and sunshine. But it does change so quickly here. I
Mm.
mean, it is so erratic, the weather. And as much as I like to believe the weather forecasts on my mobile phone, they do tend to be quite wrong.
Yeah. So the destruction has been, well, there's been a lot of destruction, I should say. There's been a lot of flooding, maybe not in your part of Malaga. I'm not sure what it was like in some of the coastal areas, but I read in the paper that schools in the Malaga province were cancelled the other day. You mentioned roads have been cut off, alternative routes to some of the popular tourist destinations.
Yeah, it's been a strange one because you read about Malaga being just destroyed by the weather, but where we are on the coast, we're relatively untouched. I mean, it has been very British style weather here for about the last week or so. The wind's been getting up so much so that I was on my little souped up scooter and was pushed halfway across the road by a gust of wind, which is quite surprising, seeing I'm a big lad. But there is a quite a famous tourist destination here called Ronda, which is the most beautiful place to visit. And that has a lovely kind of dry, scenic drive up from the coast, from close to Marbella. And there was a rockfall there, and it's blocked the road off.
Mm.
So any poor soul who is either going there to work or going there to visit now has to do a 2-hour journey to Ronda to go around the houses, where before it probably take 45 minutes to an hour.
Mm. So Ronda, geographically, it's up in the mountains there, is it?
It's like north of Marbella would be the way to say it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about I'd say 2,500 feet, 750 meters above sea level. When you drive up that road at certain times of year, you seem to go through the cloud.
Yeah. And as you said, it's a very popular tourist destination, right? People traveling to Malaga, that would be on their list of things to visit.
But people who are culturally minded like that, it is something like out of Lord of the Rings. It's got this amazing aqueduct, the bridge goes across the main entrance to the village, and it's got beautiful old, I think one of the oldest bull rings in Spain there. It's just picture postcard Spain.
Picture postcard Spain. That's it. And yeah, so an inconvenience caused by the weather. I saw that more people have unfortunately lost their lives because of the flooding. I read a guy that went out on his bike and disappeared. Nobody knew. Well, I don't know whether he's been found or not. I haven't been able to find that information. But at least 3 people have died in these recent floods. Obviously not as serious as the Valencia Dana 4 or 5 months ago, but nevertheless, we don't want to see people dying and property being destroyed and houses flooded and all of these things, which seem to be on the rise.
Yeah, I mean, we did that video around about the time of the Dana in Valencia, and we were talking about down here. And at the time, you put up this graphic, if I remember, about the risk of flooding to certain areas. And once again, it's been raining here. And if you looked at social media, you think the whole town was flooded. I mean, there's the typical people swimming along the road or on a canoe or something like that. But these are the areas that always flood.
Yeah.
People have had some mishaps here. Luckily, no one's died in my town. But somebody tried to drive across a dry river, which is usually a dry river. So it's what you call, I suppose, a ford in English, which a little stream goes across it. And the police had closed it off. And the person went round the barrier and tried to drive across it and got swept away. Luckily for him, he was saved. But there has unfortunately been other parts of Malaga, a death and more destruction. But mainly, I would imagine, on the areas that usually flood.
Yeah, well, as I remember this, we spoke about it probably maybe over a month ago, that there are certain areas in the country that are always prone to flooding. I remember seeing I think it was in Seville, in the province of Seville, there's a town there where, I can't remember the exact figures, but like 100% of the houses were at risk, or a very high percentage of the houses were at risk of flooding should they get the heavy rains. And this year the heavy rains are coming down. I mean, even here in Madrid, the river that runs through Madrid, I know you've traveled to Madrid a few times, the river that runs through, if you can call it a river, normally it's just like a little stream that trickles through the city. That's now causing people to be evacuated. People are being told to work from home to avoid the area, and it's the flow is up 15 times on its normal flow for this time of the year. So we're talking serious rainfall.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of speculation, and you get a lot of idle gossip around here that, unfortunately for us, the reservoirs in the area, which are now, so they say, have enough water in them for 3 summers, aren't interlinked. So when it rains a lot, they don't share the water across the capacity across the different reservoirs. So there's a thing that people say that the gates are open sometimes, and abnormal amount of water is released into these streams. How much that contributes to the flooding, I don't know, but it certainly does flood. But once again, it floods always in the same area.
Yeah. I'm sure that the comment section is going to be full with conspiracy theorists saying that dams have been removed and all of this, and well, I can imagine what the comment section is going to be like. I think the fact of the matter is that not a lot of change has happened. I think that news has been proven to be, I mean, when that Dana happened, a lot of people were saying, oh, it's because dams have been removed, blah, blah, blah. I think only small obstructions in rivers have been removed. I don't think any big dams have been destroyed as far as I know. I'll correct myself if that is the case, but I think the normal infrastructure is still in Malaga. And it is a big change, because I remember this time last year, Malaga was talking about shipping water in from Portugal and other parts of the world, and now the tide has turned as far as water is concerned, right? And you said 3 years, was it? You said?
Well, we've had 2 very dry winters for the last 2 years, spoilt with the weather, and people's memories is very short term, and they seem to think the winter's like that all the time, but it does rain here, right? And because of those 2 dry winters, the reservoirs were getting very low, so much so that we've talked about it before. They did saving water schemes here when they restricted, they'd no showers on the beach, amongst that, people weren't allowed to fill up their swimming pools, etc., etc. But so they're reporting now, there is enough water for the next 3 summers for the Costa del Sol.
Well,
how true that is?
Well, it'll all come down to water management, of course. I think probably these lessons have taught us that we need to be cautious with water. People should probably, I imagine, always have it in the back of their mind not to waste water, as they say, and hopefully that won't happen, and that area will be guaranteed water for the next 3 years, which is important, rather than have to ship it in containers from countries like Portugal, where Portugal shares similar weather, I imagine, to Andalusia, some parts of the south, right?
I would think so. I mean, it's a shame here that, once again, the problem's kind of solved itself with the bad weather. So we have water again. But are they going to do anything from this moment onwards to preempt any future problems we may have? I've read various ideas, but do they ever come? Are they ever put into action? Is another matter. Do they ever
come to fruition, as they say?
Fruition was the word I was looking for. Thank you.
Well, again, it all comes down to the infrastructure projects, right? How long they take to build, whether it's a priority for the next government that's going to come in, all of those things. Funding, of course. I remember being in Malaga, and a lot of the infrastructure down there was done with European funds. You could see the signs up all over the place, cohesion funds, all of these things. So obviously that would be a priority, you would think, for the governments to put into action. But as we know, and again, I don't want to be too critical because people will also say, "Oh, you guys are always slagging off Spain, blah blah blah." Well, the fact of the matter is that sometimes these things do take a long time, and I don't want to reference this again if I can avoid it, but I'll probably have to. That the Dana was a clear example of the infrastructure is not up to speed in some parts of the country, right?
I would 100% agree with you there. We have a right-wing government here in Andalusia and the junta, but it looks like that might be under threat because Sanchez has put up one of his main soldiers to go against the current president down here. So if that changes, that once again will be more bureaucracy.
Yeah, it's actually interesting what's happening in Spain. A lot of people might be aware of this, some people might not. But what Sanchez is doing, as you said, he's putting all of his strong, I'm not going to use the word strong men, but all of his strong people into the regions, right? So Andalusia, he's removed the previous leader, put the minister of finance, I think, is it
Montero,
finance? Which one?
Montero, isn't it?
Montero, yeah, she's the Hacienda minister, so the treasury minister, right? In Aragon, he's done the same thing. He's done the same thing, I think, in Castilla, Leon as well. So he's going around the country putting all of his pieces into play, which probably will guarantee his survival, I imagine, because he's not going to get too many people rebelling against his power, right?
Now, here's what I mean. He's a very clever politician. I mean, I would not so sure about his moral compass on certain political issues, but he seems to have struggled of late with a lot of the regions which have local governments opposing to his national government, causing him problems. So I think he's trying to shore up the ship a little bit. I mean, down here in Andalusia, we've always had a socialist junta here, the local government in Andalusia, but that only changed just before COVID to one.
That's an interesting point. Andalusia had the same political party controlling it for 35 years.
Yeah, and it changed just before COVID, and a guy called Juanma Moreno came in, who has been touted as the leader of the PP in the future.
Yeah. Oh, really? He's touted as the leader of the PP. Wow.
He's a typical slick right-wing politician, where it looks like he's been dressed at El Corte Inglés. I actually call him El Corte Inglés to my Spanish friends to make them laugh. But he's going to be up against it because it is a very strong socialist area down here still. Not so much maybe in where I live, where it's quite conservative, but definitely inland.
Yeah, I think Malaga's the different province, right? I think it's had a PP-led government there for a while. I might be wrong.
Mm-hmm. The coast tends to be a bit more right wing, I think, because of the pro business type attitude.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've spoken about this in the past. The way democracy works here in Spain at a national level, you get change. So you get back and forth between the two big parties. Now we've got coalition parties, for example. But the regions are the autonomous communities are an interesting place. So 35 years, I might be a couple of years off with that figure. I'll say 35, but it could be 32, 33. But it was 3 decades. Madrid has had the same government. The community, as long as I've been living here, it hasn't changed. So we're talking 25 plus years. Where else? Galicia has been the PP for a long, long time, only ever changing once, I believe. The Basque Country, the PNV, been in power for a long time, changing maybe a couple of times. Castilla-La Mancha, the socialists have controlled there for basically the whole of the democratic period in Spain, except for maybe one term. Extremadura. So in the governments, really, in the autonomous communities, there's not a lot of democratic change.
I mean, you could probably say that politics is quite tribal, I think, by those kind of statistics.
Well, that's it. People tend to hold on. I mean, it's amazing for me to think that the same political party can be in power for 35 years.
You hear a lot when people go to vote, they say, I didn't want to vote for them, but I voted like this, which I always find quite amusing. But to give you an example how messed up politics are here, as we well know, in Valencia, where you've got this Mason character who is the president of Valencia, everybody wants him to quit or resign. He's just got back into bed with the far right down there,
Vox,
Vox.
yeah.
And to make it so interesting that then the socialists in that town or that area came out and criticised them for doing the coalition again together. Yet their central government, which is the socialist government, is doing coalition deals with parties which are
What with the
ideology
extreme
completely
left?
different to theirs.
Yeah. So it's interesting here in Spain that the extreme left doesn't have a negative connotation, but the extreme right does because of Spain's dictatorship past, right?
The past makes a big deal.
That's right.
I believe that the left has been getting, the far left has been getting a bit of grief recently because they're very anti this up in the military spending and things like that.
Oh no, that could potentially bring down the government. Well, the current government that we have, because there's no way in the world, if you're a hard left, that you can agree on military spending. So what Sanchez is doing at the moment is he's trying to use all of these euphemisms to try and convince the majority, but they've come straight out and said that we're not going to support this in any way, shape, or form. But Sanchez, as you just mentioned, is a very wily character, right?
Very incredible. I mean, you have to give him credit where credit's due. I mean, he resigned as the leader of the Socialist Party and won the vote back, and then became prime minister or president of the government again. So you've got to give the guy respect. I don't like the way that he can do a coalition, for example, with your favourite Catalan, Puigdemont, who is politically has political ideology completely different to his own party. I find that quite disturbing. And unfortunately now that party is causing all sorts of problems because they are the kingmaker, aren't they?
Well, yeah, I've said it once, I've said it again, for 7 seats to be bending over backwards, the term that I like to use for this political party, to give them basically everything that they're asking for. And it's not going to stop. I mean, Spain historically has always had problems with 2 particular parts of the country, right? The Basque country and the Catalans. The Basques were quite aggressive in the way that they tried to seek independence. They were killing people. They had no problems. Apparently, the strong arm of that political movement had no problem to stick a gun at the back of someone's neck and pull the trigger. The Catalans have never gone down that path. They consider themselves probably more of a negotiation type of group of people, but historically very, very complicated areas for Spain, and they still are today. We can see it now. As you said, Sanchez is in bed with people that don't have anything in common with his philosophies or his ideologies, right, or his principles.
I've always found that it's very, very odd here. And when they got all those coalitions together, I thought this is not going to last. And as we've seen recently in Germany with the traffic light coalition there, that soon fell apart because you had 3 parties in a coalition who had completely different ideologies. Now in Germany, interesting, they're having a left wing and right wing party who are both centre left and centre right going into a coalition together. So that would be very similar to here, the PP and the PSOE doing a pact together. How that will work, time will tell. But I would be surprised if Sanchez's government doesn't fall apart.
Well, I mean, as you said, it's been here for a while now. We're in the 6 years plus, I think, maybe 7, going into 7. Podemos was the key in the first part of the Sanchez government. They've been removed. I think the key for those hard left parties has been to moderate their points of view to some extent. Obviously, they can't when we talk about war and things like that, because it just goes against everything they believe in. But Podemos has been removed. They were the radical element. They were the anti-system element, right?
Yeah.
And they were quite prepared to show that, that with the points of view. So Sanchez got rid of them, and went into bed with Yolanda Díaz, who has a very far left past in her native Galicia up there in the north of the country. But she's somewhat moderated. I don't want to sound sexist, but she's given herself a makeover.
Yeah.
She, in her speech, is a lot more moderate than I think it would have been 10 or 15 years ago, right? So I think that's the key.
I agree with that. I mean, I think all politicians have to rein it in a little bit if they want to be successful in public office. I mean, when Podemos were first involved with the original Sanchez government, they got in bed with a load of little parties, became a united party, Podemos United. And a lot of those jumped ship, those little parties, to join with the Irlandiers is sumar, which means to add. And it's almost like a kind of phoenix out of the flames of Podemos, really.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of her policies wouldn't sit right with a lot of Spanish people, I don't think. But they get
on their own. No, but yeah. And I think another problem there is that it's slowly unraveling, but how long it takes to unravel, because there's been sexual assault claims against prominent politicians on that side. So I mean, how long it's going to take how long it will take to unravel, I do not know, if it does at all. But
I made a comment to a friend when the elections were. After the last election, they're trying to work out how the coalition was going to work. And I even said, surely it's advantageous for the PP and the PSOE just to come together, isn't it? Because then you can keep out the far right and you can keep out the far left. Surely they have more in common than these extreme parties. So maybe that was something. If that happens in our lifetime, I don't know. Because people are greedy for power, aren't they?
Well, to be honest, I think it's probably more complicated, because one of the reasons why we have Vox is because the hardline PP supporters thought they were becoming too close to the centre. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we need probably common sense, as we talked about before. Is centre politics is probably what you need, dipping it into both sides, both the right and left. But it is what it is. Spanish politics is a mess.
Isn't there a saying, Mark, that common sense, unfortunately, isn't all that common?
Especially in politics.
Well, there's a lot of things that we don't see. Now, your channel, how's it going? You've been a bit sick. You've mentioned you've had some stomach issues.
I'm not the kind of person who never gets sick. And over the course of the last month and a half, I managed to pick up COVID and then had a nasty dash of stomach flu, which I thought was something I'd had. But in the end, it seems to be a lot of people have come down with the same thing. But the channel's doing all right with kind of addressing a few more issues like racism and things like that at the moment, which are getting a few people riled up. But it is what it is.
How are you finding the YouTube experience?
I quite enjoy it. I have to say I enjoy recording the content. I enjoy the editing. But it's difficult, as you know, to start up and get people to interact with you. And on our last video, I must have received about 30 or 40 messages from people about it. I said, can you just put that in the comment section? Don't send me a WhatsApp. Put it in the comment section.
Well, you give people your number directly?
Well, I know people who watch it, and they know people who've got it, and they said people I know will send me a message or an email. Or we actually got a few more emails about the last video to our YouTube channel video than I got comments. So it's all very odd, but it's fun. I enjoy it. I do enjoy it.
What are the people? What are they talking about? The viewers?
Well, not really. We did rattle the cage a little bit by discussing racism here. And when I made a pretty more of a clickbait type comment saying I thought the UK was more racist than Spain because it was more sinister, the racism in the UK, and that seemed to rile a few people up. I'm not trying to say there's no racism in Spain, because there is, but if it was being graded, I think the racism in Spain would be down to ignorance maybe and education, whereas in the UK, as I said before, I think a lot of racism there is quite serious.
Yeah, could be. Well, obviously, you're going to upset people when you talk about these things, right? You don't have to talk. You could talk about flavored ice cream. You'd upset some people.
Yeah, well, as we know from your previous video we did together, you did address that very well at the end. I did enjoy your finishing touch to our last video we did together, Stuart. Yeah,
I mean, I sometimes bring comments onto the screen and sort of point out. I mean, I don't think that I know everything. I only put out what I think I know, for example. So if I'm doing a language video, I just put out what I think is the correct way. I had lots of people saying that you pronounce it this way, you pronounce it that way. The B and the V are different here in Spain. I can't hear it so personally. So I also go onto the internet to try and prove. So I'll go to the Royal Academy of Spanish Language, and they'll say that the V and the B are virtually similar. There's virtually no distinction here in Spain. Maybe there is in the Latin American countries, the Spanish-speaking countries there, but here in Spain I can't really. But there'll always be somebody who, for whatever reason, just is in a bad mood or has decided what you've said is not what they think, and they're going to make a comment on that. And when you talk about sensitive topics like racism, for example, or I think you've done some other topics as well, which have proven to be quite sensitive.
Yeah, we did one with our foreigners still welcome in Spain. That was considered quite sensitive. We did one, our most popular ones. We did one on why we love living in Spain, which is our most popular video. But it is amazing how people won't go online and say, "Oh, thanks for the video. We enjoy your content," but they quickly jump on you if you've said something they disagree with. And a lot of the time, as you well know, you're being very open-minded with what you're discussing, looking at it from both sides, and they still criticize you.
Yeah, well, it's a difficult there's always a difficult road to walk, if you like, or path to tread, whatever the expression is, when you come to, because you don't really know who exactly you're talking to, right? So you might put something out there. I've said things in the past that I didn't even realize I'd said that people pick up on, and things get taken out of context sometimes. Maybe they only hear a certain word which triggers them, and they go off. And there are lots of triggering points around at the moment, right? So
just a few.
Well, I mean, on this channel, we've spoken about people, Tesla drivers. That stirred up a lot of debate, because how cars become political, I've got no idea. But obviously, there's more. A lot of people are looking at that nowadays, and yeah, I mean, everything can be controversial or not, depending on who you speak to, I think, right?
I think it's in a sad world at the moment. No matter what certain people do, if you disagree with it, if they will always hate on it. And if you replaced a certain person's name with another politician's name, they'd probably agree with it, which kind of sums up. I used to play tricks on my parents when I was younger, and I was quite left wing as a teen. And I would throw something at them that the left-wing government wanted to do, and they were conservative. And they go, and I'd say it was a conservative idea, and they would say it was brilliant. It's amazing. And then I'd say, well, actually, that comes from the Labour government. And they go, oh, that's terrible. But and the good idea, in my eyes, a good idea is a good idea, and it is benefiting the masses, and the world's become a better place. I don't care who does it, as long as we're all getting on with each other and can become less divided.
Well, the most important thing is to keep putting the content out. Don't let the negative comments get you down. Remember that it's a marathon, not a sprint. You should be okay.
Well, we're going to keep on plugging on, man. I enjoy it. It gives me something to do.
Well, that's it. It gives you something to do, the most important thing. Now, I've got to wrap this one up. Mark, I've got some time constraints today, but we'll be in contact for the next couple of weeks. Hopefully, the rain will have stopped, and because we've had plenty, not that I'm anti-rain, and the normal programming has returned to the Costa del Sol.
So, well, one of these days, when we do broadcast, you can broadcast from your back garden, and I can broadcast from my front terrace. So we to show off our different weather. So.
Well, we've only got here in Madrid, there's a very short window, because half of but the majority of the summer, you can't go outside after 11 a.m. It's just too hot, or later at night. So you got to be careful with that as well, because we might think that the summer's far away, but it's just around the corner.
Yeah, definitely. Right, mate. Great to speak to you.
All right, mate. Have a good one. See you later.
You too. Ciao, mate.
Bye-bye.